Right, people. So I hope you are with me right now. We'll be talking about the exodus that was led by Moses. Exodus literally means mass migration. We are looking at the political development of the Hebrews. This is the first part of the political development of the Hebrews, and then there will be another part. So let's look at this part, which covers the ancient political development, the political development of the Hebrews in the very ancient era context. So when we talk about the political development of the Hebrews, or the development of the Hebrews from a tribe to a kingdom, that is the political development that we'll be looking here, that the Hebrew people developed from a tribe to a kingdom, to a quite successful kingdom for some time. So within this trajectory, let's begin with the exodus. Exodus literally means mass migration. In this case, exodus means or the mass migration here I am referring to is the mass migration of the Hebrew people from Egypt to Mount Sinai, and from Mount Sinai to modern day Israel or Jerusalem, to Israel to be precise, not Jerusalem, Israel and Palestine. So what happened was that you already have talked about this a bit, that the Hebrew people migrated from Palestine to Egypt. The reason why they did that was when they actually settled in Canaan before moving to Egypt, things were okay. They could actually avail some food for themselves by doing agriculture and other things. But due to certain changes in the environmental condition, the Hebrew people were forced to actually move from Canaan to Egypt. And Egypt back then was a suitable place for the Hebrew people to live, because the Hebrew people were actually looking for agriculturally fertile land so that they can avail food for themselves and their tribal people, so, or the micro society people to be precise. So what happened was, areas surrounding the river Nile were very fertile, so the Hebrew people decided to move there. But once they actually moved and settled over there, in the areas surrounding the river Nile, they were captured by the New Kingdom Pharaoh. Now, after being captured by the New Kingdom Pharaoh, the Hebrew people were enslaved and very heavily tortured by the New Kingdom Pharaoh. Then one of the slaves actually uh, questioned the Pharaoh, so to say, and that particular individual was Prophet Moses. আমরা যেটাকে মুসা নবী বলি, আমরা যাকে মুসা নবী হিসাবে চিনি, ওনার হচ্ছে ইংরেজি নাম Prophet Moses. So it was Moses who actually questioned the Pharaoh, and he actually questioned the fact that the Pharaohs are misusing their power, the Pharaohs are disobeying the commandment of God, and such things. If you read the Old Testament, you'll see a detailed analysis of this, because the second book of the Old Testament, or the Torah, is actually titled Exodus. So after Moses did such things, and the Pharaohs were angry at him, and the Pharaohs tortured the Hebrew people more and more. So Moses declared to the Hebrew people, or Moses actually referred to them as the children of Israel. So Moses said that God has promised you a land, but in order to go there, we need to escape from Egypt, we need to escape from the harshness of the Pharaoh. And then Moses decided that he will migrate with all of the Hebrew people that were enslaved by the New Kingdom Pharaoh. Together they will migrate from Egypt towards the Promised Land. The Promised Land was actually Canaan. It was known as Canaan at that time, which it is presently now known as Israel. So after they actually went to Canaan, or modern day Israel, they had to fight against the Canaanites, because the Canaanites were living there. After they fought with the Canaanites, they again and they settled themselves. They again had to fight with another Semitic society, micro society known as the Philistines. So after fighting with the Philistines sort of invaded the land that was occupied by the Hebrews. So the Hebrews went to Canaan, they actually fought with the Canaanites, they occupied a land and they settled there, and that land in turn was invaded by the Philistines. But the Hebrew people were successful to defend their lands against the Philistines, against the invasion of the Philistines. But immediately after this, the Hebrew people realized they need to form a kingdom. They need to have an official army. They need to form a kingdom in order to protect their boundary. So the Hebrew people thought about it, and they got united, in the sense that all the Hebrew tribes got united under the decision that they will elect a king, and that king was actually King Saul. Under King Saul, the kingdom of Israel, so to say, was formed. So you see the political development from Exodus to becoming a kingdom. The first king of the kingdom of Israel was King Saul. King Saul was elected to face certain external and internal challenges. Internal, I mean, to actually manage the resources that was there within the kingdom of Israel, to make sure that all of the people actually could earn or could work, contribute towards development of the kingdom or something like that. And the external challenges, as I talked about, was defending the area of their kingdom from external threats, external tribes such as the Philistines and other tribes that were there. Now, after the kingdom of Israel was formed, people did not actually like King Saul, because under King Saul certain corruptions were taking place. As a result of that, it was David, I think he was part of the army force or the military force at that time, I'm not sure entirely. So it was David who actually usurped the power from King Saul. King David actually usurped মানে সে ক্ষমতা ছিনিয়ে নেয়. So King Saul was ruling, and during the ruling period of King Saul, David actually deprived Saul from his kingship, and David claimed that he is now the king. The reason for this event of usurpation is basically due to the fact that things were not going well under the rulership of King Saul. Certain corruptions were taking place. The Hebrew people were not happy, and King David or David actually did not just sit around and saw things. He took action, and he actually fought against the army of King Saul and defeated King Saul's army, and took over power. So King David now became the new king of the kingdom of Israel. And King David was a very successful king, because for 40 years David successfully ruled the kingdom of Israel. All of the Hebrew tribes that were there, the tribal identity that used to persist within the Hebrew tribes, all of the Hebrew tribes got united in real terms under King David, and he actually created a very magnificent capital for the kingdom of Israel at Jerusalem. So due to all of these things, and under King David, economic achievements were experienced by the kingdom of Israel, and certain things were happening. Now, after King David, he was succeeded by his son Solomon. Now, King Solomon it is said, was a very lavish king in the sense that he was constantly importing things from outside, and the resources that were produced or manufactured within the kingdom of Israel was not that much compared to the things Solomon was importing from the outside. So students, you can realize that within a kingdom, if the level of import rises and export decreases, so the earnings of the kingdom decrease, but the kingdom slowly moves into becoming burdened with debts. So under King Solomon, the kingdom of Israel was actually under a lot of debt. And what happened was that during a certain particular trading instance with the Phoenicians, King Solomon realized he did not have any money to pay for the goods he was importing from Phoenicia. As a result, King Solomon actually gave away many of his labors instead of money, in order to obtain the goods he was importing. So due to such action, Many people within the kingdom of Israel actually did not like Solomon and the way he was ruling. As a result of that, when King Solomon died, the kingdom of Israel was divided into two parts. One part was known as the kingdom of Israel. Another part was known as the kingdom of Judah. So under Solomon, things again were becoming really bad, in the sense that due to economic and political crisis, and due to the division of opinion towards the attitude of Solomon and his ruling system, the kingdom of Israel got divided into two parts. The partition happened. One part was known as the kingdom of Israel, which remained. Another became the kingdom of Judah. So after the death of Solomon, the kingdom of Israel actually experienced heavy decline, and as a result of this decline, a division occurred.